Hey, beautiful soul family, and welcome back to Miracles Beneath the Surface. And this topic is something that must be spoken about. And is in this day and age where there's a lot that gets put under the carpet. And this is about the aftermath. Okay, and so I just want to go into the scripture that I'm reading from, and that God had brought to my attention early this morning as I woke up. And I must disclaim that there are constructions going on in the background, so please, I will speak louder, and I hope that it's not so much of a distraction. Okay, so let's get into the scriptures. Let's go into 2 Samuel chapter 13. Okay, starting at verse 1. And it reads, "And it came to pass after this, that Absalom, the son of David, had a fair sister, whose name was Tamar. And Amnon, the son of David, loved her. And Amnon was so vexed that he fell sick for his sister Tamar, for she was a virgin, and Amnon thought it hard for him to do anything to her. But Amnon had a friend, whose name was Jonadab, the son of Shemaiah, David's brother. And Jonadab was a very subtle man. And he said unto him, Why art thou, being the king's son, lean from day to day? Wilt thou not tell me? And Amnon said unto him, I love Tamar, my brother Absalom's sister. And Jonadab said unto him, Lay thee down on thy bed, and make thyself sick. And when thy father cometh to see thee, say unto him, I pray thee, let my sister Tamar come and give me meat and dress the meat in my sight, and I may see it, and eat it at her hand. So Amnon lay down and made himself sick. And when the king was come to see him, Amnon said unto the king, I pray thee, let Tamar my sister come, and make me a couple of cakes in my sight, that I may eat at her hand. Then David sent home to Tamar, saying, Go now to thy brother Amnon's house, and dress him meat. So Tamar went to her brother Amnon's house, and he was laid down. And she took flour and kneaded it, and made cakes in his sight, and did bake the cakes. And she took a pan, and poured them out before him, but he refused to eat. And Amnon said, Have out all men from me. And they went out every man from him. And Amnon said unto Tamar, Bring the meat into the chamber, that I may eat of thine hand. And Tamar took the cakes which she had made, and brought them into the chamber to Amnon her brother. And when she brought them unto him to eat, he took hold of her, and said unto her, Come lie with me, my sister. And she answered him, Nay, my brother, do not force me, for no such thing ought to be done in Israel. Do not thou this folly. And I, whither shall I cause my shame to go? And as for thee, thou shalt be as one of the fools in Israel. Now therefore I pray thee, speak unto the king, for he will not withhold from me thee. Howbeit, he would not hearken unto her voice, but being stronger than she, forced her, and lay with her. Then Amnon hated her exceedingly, so that he hated wherewith he hated her was greater than the love wherewith he had loved her. And Amnon said unto her, Arise, be gone. And she said unto him, There is no cause. This evil in sending me away is greater than the other that thou didst unto me. But he would not hearken unto her. Then he called his servant that ministered unto him, and said, Put now this woman out from me, and bolt the door after her. And she had a garment of diverse colors upon her, for with such robes were the king's daughters that were virgins apparelled. Then his servant brought her out, and bolted the door after her. And Tamar put ashes on her head, and rent her garment of diverse colors that was on her, and laid her hand on her head, and went on crying. And Absalom her brother said unto her, Hath Amnon thy brother been with thee? But hold now thy peace, my sister. He is thy brother. Regard not this thing. So Tamar remained desolate in her brother Absalom's house. But when King David heard of these things, he was very wroth. And Absalom spake unto his brother Amnon neither good nor bad. For Absalom hated Amnon, because he had forced his sister Tamar. And it came to pass after 2 full years that Absalom had sheep shearers in Baal Hazor, which is beside Ephraim. And Absalom invited all the king's sons. And Absalom came to the king and said, Behold, now thy servant was sheep shearers. Let the king, I beseech thee, and his servants to go with thy servant. And the king said to Absalom, Nay, my son, let us not all now go, lest we be chargeable unto thee. And he pressed him, howbeit he would not go, but blessed him. Then said Absalom, If not, I pray thee, let your brother Amnon go with us. And the king said unto him, Why should he go with thee? But Absalom pressed him that he let Amnon and all the king's sons go with him. Now Absalom commanded his servants, saying, Mark ye now, when Amnon's heart is merry with wine, and when I see unto you smite Amnon, then kill him. Fear not, have not I commanded you? Be courageous, and be valiant. And the servants of Absalom did unto Amnon as Absalom had commanded. Then all the king's sons arose, and every man got him up upon his mule and fled. And it came to pass, while they were in the way, that tidings came to David, saying, Absalom hath slain all the king's sons, and there is not one of them left. Then the king arose, and tore his garments, and lay on the earth, and all his servants stood by with their clothes rent. And Jonadab, the son of Shemaiah, David's brother, answered and said, Let not my lord suppose that they have slain all the young men, the king's sons, for Amnon only is dead. For by the appointment of Absalom this hath been determined from the day that he forced his sister Tamar. Now this account is something that does happen even to this very day. And as I mentioned, this is about the aftermath. It's so sad. It's so sad. A lot of things happen that actually do not, as I mentioned, it gets swept under the rug. It does happen amongst friends and families. And virginity is so precious, okay? And we see here that Amnon wanted his sister more than he should have, okay? And it wasn't really of love, because with love it stays. Nothing comes against love. But this was lust. This was desire. And what's so interesting, the reason why this is a tough topic is because this is not something that just happens to women. This is something that happens to men. And it is hush-hushed. But the thing about it, beautiful soul family, is that the aftermath of it is that there is justice. Now, the aftermath is that here, in verse 19 of chapter 13, it says, "And Tamar put ashes on her head and rent her garment which is of diverse colors," beautiful colors, because it is beautiful to be able to keep your virginity intact. But those who do not understand that and value it, again, Amnon, this is about narcissism. This is about someone who was narcissistic, saw something that he wanted, and took it. Now, mind you, this has happened to a young girl, but this is not something that only happens to girls. This is something that happens to boys, teenagers. What's so interesting is as it's brought out in here, the King David didn't know that his son was in the bouts of this desire. And as I was doing my research, it's like, how did David not know that his son was having this type of energy towards his own sister? When we think about what David had went through, he had this desire. This is something that travels from generation to generation to generation, and it's up to each person to hold themselves accountable. And by the way, I'm going to be doing a video about accountability coming up next. But the thing about it is that David was caught up in this rapture, caught up in this lust, okay, where he was looking towards another man's wife, and he could not put it at bay. And the thing about it is that he tried to also cover up what he was doing, cover up this lustful emotions, because now there was a child in the mix. The thing about it is that what Tamar had, she may have had beauty, but the most beautiful thing that she had was her virginity. The most valuable. As brought here, the daughters of David that were virgins, they wore an apparel of diverse colors. The vibrancy of all the colors was of a high honor. And because of where this man's mind frame was at, he was led by lust, but he didn't hold himself accountable. Same thing as brought out with Cain. He was driven by the desire and anger and rage to kill his own brother. It's brought out in Genesis where God is saying, it's going to desire after you. So as he desired after his sister, that energy of lust was desiring after him. And it's so interesting, it's so sad. But the thing about it is, as right after he took something that she valued, he said, "Get out." He tossed her aside. What is so sad, and this is why it's so important, not, when you're going through fist of lust, when you're going through anything that is lower base, you're not to go to your brother or your sister or your friends or your family, but you are to go to God. Okay? This is something that he didn't do. What he did is he took it from her. Well, actually, before that, He consoling his friend. His friend was like, what's going on? He told his friend. And his friend ministered bad advice. Here it's brought out, it says in verse 3, but Amnon had a friend whose name was Jonadab, the son of Shemaiah, David's brother. And Jonadab was a very subtle man. Where else in the Bible have we seen subtle? I'll tell you. In Genesis, where it's explaining Satan, the serpent, was very what? Subtle. Conniving. And this is what he was doing. He told Amnon to be in bed and lay there and be sick. He told him exactly what to do. He didn't care. He gave him one bad advice and conniving, diverse advice. And so Amnon, who only wanted to please his flesh, did it. And Tamar, who was obedient, followed through. Now what's so interesting is that here God is showing me about when Eve was in the Garden of Eden and Satan was subtle. Now here we go. Let's go to Let's go to 11. It says, and when she had brought them into him to eat, he took hold of her and said unto her, come lie with me, my sister. Now he took the advice of someone who was noticed to be a subtle man, and then he ordered the people out so that there would be no witnesses. And then he forced himself onto his sister. And what's so interesting is that, in the Garden of Eden, we can see it as a way of, it's a force, a temptation, someone forcefully coming against you and bringing forth doubt to you. That's a type of force. But here's what she says in verse 12. And she answered him, nay, my brother, do not force me, for no such thing ought to be done in Israel. Do not thou this folly. I mean, you can bring it to the same thing. It was one commandment. Do not eat from the tree of good and evil. The commandment is something that should, God commanded it. And so therefore, we should be obedient. Because if we're not obedient, then we will be of folly. Right? And the thing about it is that she said no. And he didn't hearken unto her voice. The answer was no. And he went against her will. And he took from her. But as God was showing me in doing this message, this is not just about a girl whose virginity was taken from. This is happening to boys. And what's the aftermath of this, however? Because after this, she was so distraught that she tore at her diverse clothes. She tore at it because she was no longer the same. Where was her justice? Where was her healing? Here it says, and Absalom her brother said unto her, hath Amnon thy brother been with thee? But hold now thy peace. You see, Amnon was there to take away her value, her worth, her peace, her joy. And her brother gave her wise counsel and said, hold on to thy peace. You know, it's the theme of today about peace, holding on to it, understanding it, knowing the value of your peace. Going on to say, hold on to thy peace, my sister. He is thy brother. Regard not this thing. So Tamar remained desolate in her brother Absalom's house. She remained in pain. See, is found to be very dishonorable. By her being a virgin was put her into the positioning of being happily married and having children. And you see, this really brings forth a major hindrance, because this experience brought dishonor upon her. This was something that she mourned. How long did she mourn? Here we see she was in this for 2 years. Actually, here it says this. But when King David heard of all these things, he was very wroth. And Absalom spake unto his brother Amnon neither good nor bad, for Absalom hated Amnon because he had forced his sister Tamar. And it came to pass after 2 full years. There was 2 full years of this anguish in Absalom. Now, Absalom was a very hothead. If you don't know, I encourage you to read it, okay? And he was one that this fired him up to wanting to be a judge. But that's another story. Here we see that it doesn't show where she is healed. It doesn't show that she gets back her virginity. So what is the aftermath of this? And the thing about it is that Absalom set up a plan to come after the very life of Amnon. So he took the value away from his sister, his half-sister. And what's so interesting is that he discarded her. Here it goes on to show Amnon hated, verse 15. Then Amnon hated her exceedingly. Now, why was that? So that he hated her wherewith he hated her was greater than the love wherewith he had loved her. Was it even love? And Amnon said unto her, Arise and be gone. Now, as I've brought in different, because I also have another channel called On Another Level Ministry. And the thing about it is that there's so many different levels to this. You have the small circle, then you have a medium circle, then you have a larger circle. All right. And so the thing about it is that this happens within homes, but then again, it also happens in communities. And then this happens nationwide and internationally. Also, this happens by the means of the emotions. This happens by the means of the body and the mind. Another way, this happens by the means of spiritual, which is a larger part. Spiritually, this is taking place where you have a peace and a love and a joy and a value within, but yet there are certain things that want to take it and discard. And it's all led by bad advice. The same one that gave the bad advice was the same one that brought forth a message. I mean, it's like did he even care about Amnon? Was he even a good friend to give him bad advice? Because we see here that he wasn't, in my opinion, he wasn't really torn up. Here it says in verse 32, the latter part, it says, let not my Lord suppose that they have slain all the young men, the king's sons, for Amnon only is dead. For by the appointment of Absalom, this hath been determined from the day that he forced his sister Tamar. So the thing about it is, like, he's like, oh no, don't worry. This didn't happen to all the sons, but this happened to one of your sons. But this is why it happened to one of your sons. But yet, was he not the one that gave him the advice to do so? So what is the aftermath of this? The aftermath is death. Amnon lost his life. Whenever people fall to the lust, the desires of their lust, and sorry, I think it's acting up, but the desires of their lust, what comes at the end is death. But what also comes is healing. As I mentioned, this is happening in a small degree, in a next level degree, and a ginormous degree, that so much comes against someone's value, someone's peace, someone's love, someone's joy, someone's faith, someone's trust, someone's hope, just to take it away, to disregard. There was no true love in the matter. When a person, he said that the hate had overcome him. First it was lust, then it was extreme hate, where he told her to be gone, cast aside as trash. What's so interesting here is that, and when I say interesting, it's not really interesting, it's very sad. Here we have in verse 17, it says, then he called his servant that ministered unto him and said, put now this woman out from me, and bolt the door after her. Took her virginity, took her value, took her joy, and then shoved her out. And bolted the door. Not just shut the door, but I guess this is close, lock, bolt the door after her. Out in the streets. Out and about. Sadly enough, he was, quote unquote, no longer sick. There are people in this world who, unless they can overcome your will, unless they can take from you, they are sick and disgusted. And they won't be happy until they take that of which is most valuable to you. And you may be this person. This may have happened to you. You may be caught up in desolation. And you may ask, but where is my justice? And where is my peace? And her brother said, hold on to that of which you have. It took 2 years. It may take a long period of time where you're asking yourself these questions. God, where were you? Why did this happen to me? Why was something that I value so much taken from me? Where is my justice? And this is happening on many levels. And the thing about it is that God used Absalom to get justice. You see, the thing about it is that when the Israelites turned their back, and this is just a sidebar, this is nothing really, when the Israelites turn their back against God and they go after those gods and images and idols, then the images and idols come after them. What I'm trying to say is that of which you turn to becomes the very thing that turns against you. Meaning, Absalom was a hothead. And this hothead got others to come. He commanded others to take his life. After that, he fled. And we see further on that he was on a mission, okay? I would like to say that he was a great person, but he himself was not. He was I would say he's a very hot-head, tempered type of person. And even though Amnon's life was taken, the question is the aftermath, the healing for Tamar. If you yourself are going through this, have gone through this, in any way, shape, or form, I encourage you to, one, go in prayer. Next, I encourage you to go to a church, but follow after prayer, hear from the Lord. Immediately, we don't have to go to a church or go to a bishop, and forgive me for saying this, but it comes immediately. Advice comes immediately. Consolement comes immediately. This is why I always turn to the Bible. Because you can turn to the left and the right, and just like Jonadab, you may get bad advice. You know, God is having me to speak about this because this is not just, as I mentioned, this is not just about virginity that is taken either from a boy or a girl. This is about so many things about rights. This is so much things about freedom. This is so many things about, it's a lot of things that were forcefully put upon people, and yet it was taken away. What did they take away? They take away their own value. They take away their own joy, peace of mind. And so as the world takes away, because that's part of his tribulations, we must go to God. And we will be healed. But also in going to God, we must also forgive. And as we forgive and hand it over back to God, we receive the healing. God provides people. Just as that appointed time when God had asked Abraham to sacrifice his son to see where he was at in his heart, he didn't have Abraham go through it. He provided a lamb. He provided cattle of some sort to be the sacrifice. As we go through this, whoever you are, and this is not, remember, this is on different levels. Go to God, and you will be consoled, and you will be healed, not just mentally, not just physically, but so much far deep emotionally. There will be a testimony. And that's what it's about. You may say, well, if God is with me, then why was this caused? God was with you and was really with you. God feels your pain. It's just like the Hebrew brothers. They were thrown in the furnace. As they were in the furnace, however, the only things that were set on fire that melted away or got burned away was the binds on their wrists and on their feet. The very things that were put around them to keep them gripped up. But those were burnt off. But they were in the midst of the fire, and as they were in the midst of the fire, an angel was with them. And as they came out, there was a testimony. As you come out, there's a testimony. And you're made even stronger. And you, yes, you are utilized to help somebody else. Now, as you pray, this is not something that happens overnight. Yes, you get the consolement. Yes, you get the peace. But it doesn't just stop there. Healing continues forth. And God sends messengers and guidance to help you along the way. But you have a testimony. You can help somebody else. And imagine, this is going on different planes. And the very ones that come against you and take your will and take your joy and take your love, take that of which is valuable, they will meet their ends. But you will be able to live to tell your story. Scripture that really I find to be motivational is found in Revelation chapter 21, verse 4. Actually, let's go to verse 3. And it says, "And I heard a great voice out of heaven say, Behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and he will dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and God himself shall be with them, and be their God." Verse 4, "And God shall wipe away all their tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things have passed away." And he that sat upon the throne said, "Behold, I make all things new." And he said unto me, "Write, for these words are true and faithful." Let's go to verse 6 because it's very good. It says, "And he said unto me, It is done." Can I take a pause on that? So if you're going through this, as you're going through the healing, being present as God is present ever so with you, understand that it is done. Sometimes we tend to carry it on, and I understand, but it's about saying it is done. I had this happen to me on so many different levels, but it is done. It stops with me. I will not carry this forward into the next generations of me. I will not let this stop me from living. Okay? Here it says, it is done. Further on it says, "I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. I will give unto him that is athirst of the fountain of water of life freely." And in this we're seeing of life freely, where we no longer thirst, not caught up in wandering or desolation. And those that come against the way and cast you out as though you're nothing, they will be brought to an end. Have a beautiful and wonderful day.